I mean, I only got a few snaps. All right. Again, I present to some and introduce to others. Rev Kennetta Carter, her information is in the digital. How many of you got your digital planning meeting booklet? Amen. You can print it when you get home and do some other things. Trying to say we're going to make some copies available, but we're trying to make sure that we can conserve as much resources as we can. And so the resources we can properly expend on printing, we're using to kind of help this digital situation so more people can be engaged. What do you think about that?
Yes, sir.
Come on, give God a hand clap of praise. All right, Rev Carter.
Good morning. Good morning to each and every one of you. Just like to say thank you, Bishop Zanders, for this opportunity to be able to come today to present to you, and greetings to each and every one of you on this wonderful and awesome day the Lord has made. As we go today, as we're dealing with, today I'll be dealing with the Board of Examiners and the church. Amen. And first I'll just basically give an introduction of myself. I'd just like to just kind of reiterate that I do have experience on the Board of Examiners, and I've been on the district designer district Board of Examiners, as well as I'm the chair currently and have been it for a while. Also, I'm the secretary of the 11th Episcopal District Board of Examiners, and have been it over like 13 years. And also I am on a member of the East Conference Board of Examiners. So just kind of let you know, I do have a little bit of experience as it relates to being on the Board of Examiners. Today, as we deal with the Board of Examiners, the Board of Examiners is the board that is the gatekeeper. Yes. And that's so important that we understand that the Board of Examiners is the gatekeeper. And we have to be mindful of that and keep that before us, because so often we tend to just move people through and not realizing that what we need to do is help impart in them, they may be ready, may not be ready. So it's up to the Board of Examiners to be that final say-so before they go forth. So really, what is the gatekeeper? Gatekeeper is the one who controls access of persons entering, candidates entering into the ministry in the AME church or a particular organization. But not only that, as we deal with it, we first want to understand, what is the Board of Examiners? What does the Board of Examiners entail? What is it encompass with? And so first of all, we know that there's the dean of the board, is appointed by the presiding bishop of a district, and in turn will nominate the staff for the board. But the board is ultimately approved by the annual conference. At the annual conference, you know that we do approve that. But the bishop makes the appointment. The bishop makes the appointment of the chair and the members of the Board of Examiners. One of the qualifications for those who are on the board, they must be those who have a master's of divinity. I do know that sometimes maybe on the district level, because of the limited amount of persons who may be having masters of divinity, there may be a few on there on the local level, on the district level, because I know district level, that may have persons who are not, who do not have that masters of divinity, but they may also have great experience. So just wanted to make that note that there are some exceptions. Boards, on the Board of Examiners, you have the chair, you have those who's the dean, you have the dean that's over the education part and deals with the institute. And so on the board, there should be 5 committees. The committee of instruction for the class of admissions. Then there should be the committee of instruction for the first year studies, the committee of instruction for the second year studies, the committee on instruction for the third year, studies, and also the committee on instructions for the 4th year. So in other words, it is a process that the candidates have to go through. It's not anything they just say, okay, I accept my calling, let me jump into the ministry, or I've been called by God. Okay, well, there's a process that in the AME Church that some people do. Why should we have to go through that? But it is a very important thing that we do go through, because it's a time of learning, a time of preparing as we prepare for ministry on our journey. The Committee on Instruction must meet during the annual conference year. During the year, the candidates must have at least 16 hours of study. So in other words, when they come to Institute, it's not a one-day thing that you say, okay, we've had 8 hours or 4 hours or 2 hours of study, and that's it. No, they have to have at least 16 hours of study. The instructors will report the grades to the dean at the end of the Institute. And so then they will also should be given a certificate of completion, which will be presented to the Board of Examiners. If persons are attending seminary, they are exempt from attending the Institute classes, but they must be actively enrolled in school as it shows in the discipline. But must pass an exam on AME history, polity, and doctrine. But if it's not in place, we do it. Sometimes the districts under the leadership of the bishops, they may have where you have to also do Institute as well. So that's under the discretion of the bishop, because the bishop is the head chair of the Board of Examiners. There's a process for the candidate of ministry. There's a process, and in this process, we know that first of all, they must acknowledge their call into ministry. Then they have an initial sermon, church conference, I'll go from there. So once they acknowledge their calling, in some situations, they may acknowledge it to their class leader, if you have the class leader system active in your church. But however, if not, they should make sure they go to the pastor to acknowledge their call. Then the pastor will in turn then make sure that they meet with that candidate and talk about ministry as a whole in general, so they can be informed and be aware of where they're headed, what the ministry is really all about. It's not a play thing. It's not say, well, I called, and it's something serious. Right. Because even as we deal with the ministry, we're helping to understand that life and death is in the hands. Our voices are preaching, our teaching, because we want to bring life to people and not bring death. And so it's very crucial. So then it takes the time when it's the initial sermon. Now, from the time they acknowledge their call to the time they do their initial sermon, it may be some time. It's not that they're going to do it next Sunday. Exactly. But there's some time, and it's under the discretion of the pastor to help them, to walk them through this, really see where they are. That's why as pastors it's so important that we have discernment and really understand where that person is, where they're headed. Are they really ready to go into this process or not? So they have the initial sermon, and then the initial sermon, the church has to have a called church conference specifically for to make a motion to accept them and to allow them to be able to be moved forward to the quarterly conference. And so church votes on that, they move them along. That's another crucial point too, is making sure that the church understands, what's going on. Oh, that's my baby, I want to pass them along. Well, sometimes that baby may not be ready. So we just want to make sure and help them to understand there's a serious thing. Then after that, you go to the quarterly conference, the finalist meeting. You go to the quarterly conference, and the quarterly conference make a recommendation, and then for them to be moved on to the district conference. From the district conference, at the district conference, the Board of Examiners at the district conference level will meet, and they will, at this meeting, they will interview them. They will talk to them. They help them to understand what the process is all about. Also, not only that, they will have to receive a completed application. It's a process. They would receive the completed application at this time for those who are being admitted into the process. Then the board of examiners will examine them, they will interview the candidates, and then from there, they will recommend them to the district conference, either to be moved forward to the annual conference, and sometimes they have to be sent back. Maybe because they haven't met the requirements, or maybe it's just not that timing for them, that they need to go back to their local church. As far as that, then from there, they go to the annual conference, and we'll discuss that next. So it's just I'm ready to kind of move forward a little bit. But if the district conference approves, then the conference board of examiners will examine candidates and recommend them to be admitted on trial to the annual conference, or either send them back to the local church because of maybe some challenges. So we just want to let everyone know that. Then there's the track for ministry. As we deal with the track for ministry, there are many tracks. There's the itinerant track, there's the local track, there's the evangelist, and then there's the exhorter. And so we want to help us to understand, we know that the itinerant means that what? You can be sent anywhere. Anywhere that you may be sent to what? To serve. Amen. Or to go where willingly, praise the Lord. The local means that they're under a pastor, a local church, one designated church that they will be under and be able to serve. And then you have your evangelists and you have your exhorters. And so when it comes down to the itinerant track, itinerants, they must, in order, the limited age, and we'll get to that kind of moving through, the age that we know that persons can enter into ministry is what? 60 years old. That's the oldest they can be to enter into ministry for the itinerant track, and that is 60 years old. And so when they begin the process, we know that they must have, on the itinerant track, must have a bachelor's or close to finishing their diaconate orders, their diaconate orders, and must have a seminary degree. Itinerant must have bachelor's or close to finishing for their deacon orders, and must have a seminary degree from an accredited school, ATS school, seminary school, in order to get their itinerant elders orders. And so what we're encouraging persons is to make sure that the candidates, really before you kind of get them into ministry, to make sure the process, make sure that they have taken at least like 32 courses, or at least halfway through, or almost through, so that by the time they finish their 2 years of traveling, that they will be able to get their diaconate orders. We don't, because if not, they haven't started college, then they're going to be in a process. They're going to be just spending, persons can get discouraged, but then you also get the backlog. So we want to encourage to make sure that those who are entering into the ministry, make sure they're almost completing their bachelor's, or they're getting ready to, or they're finished and have their bachelor's degree. And then make sure that as they get ready to go into seminary, that it is an accredited seminary school. But they not only look at not only their academic requirements, but you also got to look at them spiritually. Amen. Amen. Look at their spirituality, look at the psychologically, their gifts and graces, and the life and ministry in the church. We need to look at all these things. It's not just about academics, amen, but it's about the whole person as a whole. And are they really ready? They're doing some serious things out there. They got some issues going on, maybe some psychological living. They need to look at it in detail and really see if they're ready for this process and things going on. So we just want to make sure that also we know that part of the requirements for an itinerant is to, and even all of them who are coming into the process have to have a psychological examination. You have to have that psychological examination. And I know in certain circumstances, we know that that's on the responsibility, could be on the candidates, but also maybe the church can help with that. to help them because we know that it can be expensive for us at times. We already talked about the requirements. Can I be older than 60 years old for enter into the itinerant ministry? You can be older than 60 to be, you're going to be a local, but in order to be an itinerant elder, you have to be, or an itinerant ministry, then you have to be no older than 60 years of age. Also have to have proof. Because you know, sometimes somebody say they one age, they another age. So it has to be with a certified stamp, birth certificate.
That's right.
For the persons. And also, in order to receive deacon orders, one must travel a minimum of 2 years. So don't think it's because you just, we wanted to make sure that our candidates understand that just because they've gotten into the process, that okay, I'm gonna be next year, I'm gonna be ordained a deacon. I even have my bachelor's degree, and I'm gonna be ordained. No, there's a process. You still have to travel to a minimum of 2 years. For those who are deacons and who in the process also becoming an elder. And in order to become an elder, you have to travel 4 years. So they may have their Masters of Divinity in their 3rd year in the process, but they have to go another year of traveling in the board of visitors. They'll be released from the board, but yet still they have to still travel a year before they're able to get their elders' orders at the annual conference. Background checks must also be taken at least 30 days before the annual conference at the cost of the candidate or an ordained minister. So we just want to make sure that we're doing that. Candidates may not be admitted if they have been convicted of murder, aggressive, aggravated assault, human trafficking, sexual abuse, sexual assault, rape, injury to a child, incest, indecency with a child, promoting child pornography, sales and distribution of prohibited substance, and endangerment of children. We have to remember that as people go through, they may end up pastoring. So as they are pastoring, or even if they staff, or if they're in the ministry under some other leadership, we have to make sure that they're not going to be harmful to those who we are shepherding. The Lord has entrusted us to be over. So we have to make sure on our end, because then later on, not only that, but later on, there could be possibly of lawsuits. And we want to make sure that we eliminate or prevent that from occurring by making sure that we on our end do our part and making sure. That's what we call the board of what? Examiners. Where we are to really thoroughly examine persons. Yes, yes.
I'm thinking about the rise of social media, and I'm wondering whether or not the church should consider the need to add the looking at the investigation of social media as a possibility to make sure that we are preventing it. Because a lot of folks have not been convicted, but that doesn't mean that they don't have stuff on the web that indicates. And we all know that of so many different kinds of crimes, from domestic violence to terrorism, where somebody hasn't been convicted, but the evidence is clearly right there. And I'm thinking that maybe we ought to consider. I'm just putting it out there.
And the general conference is when? The general conference is when? Next year. And what happens at the general conference? We what? Pass laws. And so laws have to be what? Formulated and what? Submitted. So
Hello, put it out there, 16.
So you're able to also do that. But it does not mean because you submit it that it's going to be passed. But at least it can be addressed and be read. So unless it's gone out beforehand. But yes, but so therefore, in order for the changes to come, it takes We have to do it. Somebody has to write it.
Amen.
Somebody has to, fill out the form. So, and I'm sure that, the time is coming up real soon, if it hadn't already started, where you're able to submit some changes to the law.
Yes.
So you would need to, I know when you submitted it, you have to have the original statement, page number and all that information, and then the changes that you want for that to occur. So, yes, sir.
Dr. Carter. Back to term of study
Yes, sir.
for entry into ministry. There has been some concern if whether or not the first year, the year of trial, that year constitutes your first year of study.
Thank you.
Because there has been an approach that says that if your first year of the trial year be counted as your first year of study. Consequently, the program is a 4-year program, another 5-year program. So could you just shed some light on that if you could please?
I know that there have been situations where some do count, as you're saying, as they go from the district conference, and between the district conference and the annual conference, they go to the Board of Examiners, and which is usually like the class of admission, but they do go that year. And then at the end conference, there's a class of admission. So they do end up, like you say, in a 4-year instead of 5-year. And I'm gonna look to my bishop, my father minister, Bishop Sanders, to help make a little clarity on that for us, please, sir.
This one says,
It says the year of admission should be counted as the first.
yes, it's a 4-year process.
That's right.
You can't get, and the other thing, I know everybody interprets the discipline. That bishop interprets. Because what happens, we get confusing things. When you come in, the time from your application being accepted by the district board of examiners, and they're sending you to the annual conference, they should be training you during that period until you come to the admission. Because guess what? We call for the class on what? Admissions. And, right? All right?
Yeah.
So it is 5, but it's not 5 counted. Because that period, when the district conference, I just got elected yesterday. And the problem, so many times that we like some people, we do what we want to do.
Right.
Then when we don't like people,
Yeah. Yeah.
we move the post. And you can't do that. But before it gets to the Board of Examiners, local churches, that's why I wanted this, so the stewards and the lay people, when people have come and you don't believe they're ready, you have to be courageous enough, not on junk, but on solid belief and substance. Let's slow that process down. That's right. Because guess what? The only persons I can send back to you are persons that you send to us.
That's right.
And when we don't take the ministry serious, pastors, some of us go along because some person has given us total fit on these boards. So the way to get them out the way, oh, God got a call on your life. And you put them in the ministry track. Okay, but like what y'all talking about. So class of admission is really the period between the district conference up until the period of the annual conference. And then they have been given by the district board of examiners to the conference board of examiners as class of admission. All right, and then some conferences, they set it up where once they send that information to the conference board, them people then go to the conference board and start with that admission thing. So when they come, they are now the class of admission. We make a motion that they would be admitted on trial and placed in the first year class. So that's when their process, then they go from the first year class, then they go into the second year class. But some people wanted to read that they be placed in the class of admission and then bring them back next year as the class of admission, and that's a 5-year process, but it's 4. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
I hope that makes sense. It's 4. Okay, and the way you get 4, again, they've answered their call. Then once the district conference is making a recommendation, and I hope our board would then receive from the district conference those individuals, and then someone get in touch with them and make sure they are now having classes for admission. You follow what I'm saying? That they have those instructions. The other thing, be careful. Don't hold a brother or sister out. And I know we're talking about be close to your bachelor's degree. The law does not say that you have to have a bachelor's degree to be admitted.
Come on now. Come on, come on, come on.
That's right, Bishop.
Yes.
But a person, that's what pastors, that relationship, you have to be true with the person. You can't go anywhere until you get that bachelor's degree. So maybe it's good to just wait a little bit. For me, I got called to preach at the age of 15. I couldn't even get to the annual conference because I didn't have a high school. That's what it requires to be admitted. I didn't even have a high school. So I acknowledged my call. My pastor accepted that. They nurtured me, they developed me, and they had some rough places that people didn't want to go. There was a church with 3 members, 2 of them was in the, I'm not being funny. And it was about 80, 90 miles one way. I was in high school. And I went.
Come on.
What you talking about?
Okay, in high school, quarterback of the football team. I went. I went. I'm a bishop today, but I went. Persons want these orders. I've had deacons tell me I can't go. I ain't going. Why are we pressing to ordain people? Give them credentials to do nothing but to get in people's way because they want your presiding elder district and they want to pastor the church you pastor. I can't keep it for 100. Okay, and so those are conversations that should not be, I'm gonna get out of the presentation, that should not be at the annual conference board of examiners table. Because when pastors are pastors, you know how to say yes, no, in a loving manner. and let your yes be yes,
And no, be no.
and your no be no.
Amen.
But when you play games, and so that's how, so it's a 4-year process. And there are some extenuating circumstances. When you start talking about ordination, called the missionary rule. The missionary rule. But right now, we don't really need the missionary rule. I got a lot of deacons and a lot of people with just sitting down. And that's too far. And I understand the culture. And so that's why we are a little strapped, if you will, because our culture dictates that wherever you are in this district, see, in other districts, you're able to move persons, well, let me talk about myself. I got ordained in the Central Conference. I've only served in 3 different conferences. I got ordained in the Central Conference, right? My first pastoral appointment by a bishop legitimately signed after I supplied was in the East Conference. I left the East Conference and went to the Orlando Conference. And then I came back to the East Conference. What I'm saying is very difficult in this district, but I have learned that there is a pattern from Jamaica, maybe to Guyana, and from Guyana to Barbados, and the likes, trying to do that. But that takes women and men who, again, we have to understand, we have to get credentials. Sometimes there's a work permit required, like I learned in London. So it's a lot of stuff. And I know what the book says, but then there's also the law of the land.
Yes.
So you have to take all that together. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so there are no cookie cut circumstances, but what I am saying, I hope we administer fair and not with partiality.
Amen.
That's all I'm, if we're gonna bend the rule, make sure we're gonna keep the rule kind of bent for everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Yes, we have another question on here.
Kind of real quick. Is ATS international or is it just national? I just.
I meant to hit that one too.
Okay.
Again, we have to look at what is the governing, sustaining agencies in the places that we're serving. All right, and again, that's very, see, let me say this. When you've been through the process and you haven't taken the elevator, you come with a sense of what all of these.
Yeah.
And so again, persons argue where there's a different, so we understand the system. But what we've tried to do now is so that there's not in it this kind of this discouragement or disparaging this, is that now we're able to do classes online. So we can go to Dr. Lawrence and Dr. Michael Brown at Payne. Not that our schools here in the Caribbeans are not acceptable. This brother here is a Carter, is that the correct name? Yes, Carter, over in Barbados. So our schools, but our people don't want to go to our schools. And the thing I said, let's go. What conference was Jamaica conference? That's Dr. Who's the board of examiners? Turkey. Let's go meet with the seminary there. And let's design something so that if you don't want to do paint, You can do your country. You can rep your, and then that would be acceptable
Yes.
and tied in. But that comes with a little work from the bishop and the board of examiners working what? Together. And we've made a great stride in the number of persons going to seminary. And as I've been praying about that coming over here, some of these jokers, they're gonna go to school, but they don't go help pastor some of these churches.
Oh, see. Okay.
You're not gonna suck up all the money
That's
and not wanna go and serve. I've been praying about that. Get mad if you want, but I'm not gonna prepare you to do nothing. Because the best training is to be able to take some of that technical training and put it in application. That's what has made the people at Westwood so excited about our cohorts, is that they're not only in the classroom, they're also in the praxis. So they're excited about that. So yes, there are differences, but we're working to close those things. But as long as we can certify and know what we're doing, okay? And what happens, people know so many other people. They got so many other contacts. They won't go around their bishop. And so when I get to where you've already done something, I'm gonna let you do what you done done, because I got other things I need to do. And since I was not important enough, all right, because there's nothing coming with the 16th district name on it that will not ultimately find itself back to me.
That's correct.
All right, and if you don't respect me enough, then I'm not gonna respect you enough to try to put my nose in your business. God bless you.
Thank you, Bishop, for that wealth of knowledge and clarity and information. I'm grateful for that. Also, we do want to encourage as a part of that. Yes, sure.
Just to be clear, because I have never seen, or I've never thought of the period that you're coming between the presiding and the two, the conference board of examiners, for the want of a better term, as something to be counted as you're having completed the track process. Just let me say that in that business. From the time you were admitted by the bishop, let me say by the bishop, on your conference, that is when the process really starts. But when I'm saying in terms of counting the years of study, the 4 years, so we understand it, because I think somebody last time was mad and they didn't. They were praying for to be admitted, but never passed through the presiding elect process, and so they, in terms of this district conference, and so they was mad and saying, "Oh, the board of examiners knew that this didn't happen. Why didn't they tell them something?" And they were mad. So I had called them afterwards and said, "Hey, you don't have a title and a right. This thing has to be observed, not because we are abroad, we accept anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Not because we're abroad, we accept anything. But people think that we must just jump shoot you. And I think what is happening now, we've seen that after, rightfully say, some persons might get in. I think it was Bishop Billing made the same point about the gatekeepers. When you, and Webster too, when you jump in and they go through, and as Bishop was put from now, they get the robe, and the presiding elder can't even touch it. And not even the bishop can touch it. Because if not, they go to some other place, they're gonna turn archbishop locally and.
Well said.
One man.
Yeah, understand.
That's
That's
how we
right.
got this sort of things on the good behaviors, because they're already there.
Mhm.
And so they can, so it's good that we have this clarity. That the first year of the counting, the completion is when you are admitted by the conference.
Yes.
So all of this that we're doing you're going through is really preparation. Because you gotta know, you gotta understand what is happening. If not, you get a rebellious lot.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that information. Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions?
Good stuff.
Okay, also, get back on this part, for those desiring to pastor, other criminal convictions will be evaluated by the board. If the candidate is already ordained elder, then they will be referred to the Ministry of Efficiency and not the Board of Examiners. So those who are in the process, the Board of Examiners will deal with it, but those who are already ordained will go through the Ministry of Efficiency.
That's good. And I'm gonna remind me, I want to say something about the Ministry of Efficiency.
Okay. Candidates who entering the ministry as a local, due to their age may later seek itinerant orders, providing that they meet the educational requirements or the requirements that are designated. They must go back before the Board of Examiners and transfer, the orders will be transferred through the Board of Examiners, which will occur at the annual conference, which actually will occur at the annual conference, or an appropriate ceremony or service would happen with appropriate liturgy regarding them for the transfer. Candidates must have the tools. The 3 tools, which you all know, is the discipline of the African Methodist Church, the Bible, and their hymnal. And they should be carrying them, they should keep them through the whole process, and even after the process, because they would definitely be needed throughout. And the candidate should be interviewed at annual conference and not exceeding 6 months after the annual conference. So the next time they will be interviewed, which is basically when we have the district conference. Will be that time, which is within 6 months when that occurs. Candidates transferring from another denomination, which we do have them. The people come from other denominations must come before the board and be examined just like anyone else who's in the denomination. And they must travel the 2 years. They ain't just come in and just be transferred and they become itinerant deacon or itinerant elder, but they must travel the 2 years as those who are in the process, who are already in the process, and then they must meet the requirements of becoming ordained in the AME church. Yes, sir.
Should it be from any denomination? If I bring you from Church of Christ, non-instrumental and those churches, they follow the same thing, or is it? If they come from Church of Christ or Assembly of God or Potter's House or something, or is it what we call the Orthodox churches, like the Catholics, the Anglicans, another Methodist body, the Wesleyan Church, those are the things that we say that they will observe this process.
Well, even in my experience, we have had persons who come, like maybe Church of God in Christ or others, but they still have to go through the process and the teaching. That's what the one important thing that we all have to also realize, that is they're traveling, they're not just traveling, but they're going through teaching institutes as well. So they're being taught, but also that's when you also talk with them and whoever the pastors as well, to help get understanding, clarity, help them to understand about the AME church and our procedures, our policies, so that, if they're in agreement with it, they'll stay on board, but if not, then they won't. That's the purpose. It's not that people are just traveling, once they get admitted to the Board of Examiners, in the conference, they still have to go through the classes for training.
Oh, so in terms of brethren, don't believe in women in leadership positions. Those are the sort of people we still with us in the main like that.
But they still have to, but as you're talking with them, walking with them, you have to understand, because I know some A&E's that don't believe in women.
Oh, say, come on.
I know, but
I'm just saying.
they're inside of it already, the areas are there already. These churches I know, the brethren churches say women must not lead, period, so they're coming with that already.
Who the pastor that bring it?
Exactly.
That's
the point.
Exactly. Again, it goes, no, again, it goes back to who's bringing them. And if you are pushing that agenda, then that doesn't work. It's re-obligation, 2 years of training and whatever. And if you cut the mustard, then you cut the mustard. If you don't, then you don't get it. So it's not saying, I think I'm trying to hear you say, we shouldn't accept them people because we know that they do X, Y, Z. I think
I'm trying to just put a period in terms of 2 years, but about 3 or 4 years.
that's what the book says. So the stuff we trying to change, you have to go to the general conference
Yes.
and do some changing and speak in that forum and get it done. Because again, that's what we're doing. We're separating a whole lot of stuff because we know more than what the general conference in its wisdom. So that's why when you go to the general conference, the same way you're debating in this little room, don't be afraid of the big room. You follow what I'm saying? So we can make that's how you make changes. Because when it comes back to the little place, then we become little GODSs. I had somebody tell me, don't say that. We know where that comes from and we don't like it. I don't care what you're not liking it. You got little G's, not only in the Caribbean, but all over there in the church. You got little bishops, all over there in the church. And so, I didn't get elected for you to like me. The Lord elected me for me to lead his people in a manner that's right. So you're right. Some people don't do, but it says 2 years, and then while I'm up, now the 60 years, that was a period. Now, that was grace because we changed the age. So that's probably obsolete now. The second thing is, I am not going to change anybody who comes in trying to bypass. I had a couple of annual conferences where persons were 26 or 30 talking about they want local ministry. I said, no. I said, no. Because they're trying to short circuit, quote unquote, the educational. But the same thing I'm requiring of an itinerant, the locals gonna have to get some of that too. So there are no shortcuts. So I told the person, go check and make sure now. Because if they come in and they do local, number one, I'm not positioned to do that. But if the Lord should say do it, as long as I'm the bishop, and as long as I am a bishop, they're gonna hold that local status. Because whoever come behind me, whenever that is, they're gonna know this person here. That's the rich young ruler concept. Jesus told us, go sell what you And he decided he wanted to leave, all right? Because he done everything else, but when it came to doing this, so I just wanted to put that out there because local ministry is because persons that you got to call late, maybe. But there's no need for somebody 26 years old talking about they going into local ministry. And then secondly, I'm almost not inclined to do local ministry because we set the pastor who's coming in a disadvantage. Some of the locals have been there since Moby was a minnow and Trigger was a colt. And they have influence over the sisters and brothers in that congregation. And so when the new pastor gets there and comes in, the members gravitate more. And then try to sometimes, we wish you'd been our pastor. All I've been is us all my life. And so those are the things that the Board of Examiners, but again, and I started, it comes from who's sending these people. Before these persons that you were talking about even get to the Board of Examiners, some pastor then had conversation. So you need to work on them about what you know, and don't put that on your colleagues. And then they also, in order to even get ready to come to the Board of Examiners, they gotta go by somebody's church conference. So lay members, you don't have to accept everything, but you gotta have solid foundation. Not just because they wear blue and you like gray. Does that make sense? So people just don't get to these places without somebody. And so what I'm gonna do, and what I've been doing, that's why I asked you who your mother or father in the ministry. That's why I asked you who's your mentor. Because if I can see where you come from, I can pretty much tell what you're about. Y'all miss it.
One point.
You know, I can pretty much tell. And that's why sometimes we have a hard time changing the what? Culture. And that's what we're working on. And thank you for that point, Elder. Because we are District 16, and we have such challenges geographically, does not mean we accept anything. Who is to say that or somebody said, and I'm going to that, somebody said, we don't need y'all to come over here and tell us what to do. I have, and I took offense to that. Y'all, come over here and tell us what to do. So if you go ahead and get equipped, who is to say you shouldn't be going over there? But then you want me to ordain you because you said you're doing the work and you just need the ordination, but then God has greater for you. You have the ordination, but no education. When you get over there, guess what? You're going to get turned back around. So, do the process. Trust God. And my shining example is somebody y'all know very well right here from the Bethesda, Kenneth Edward Marcus. Left here. Went. Get online and Google Turner Cathedral if you've never seen it. When you get to America and get an opportunity, make it your business when a meeting is in Atlanta. Make it your business, go out there. He's from Trinidad. God used him in America. So when your gift It's used by the Holy Spirit to make room for.
Yes, yes.
But when you want pity.
Yeah.
So no, we expect the best. And we're making preparation for people to go to school. Finishing up on some of their bills now. Go to school, get equipped, so you can come back and make it good, make it better. And quit having this whole ingrown syndrome, us and we. Us and we. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We don't need, the book says this is what we have to do. And we are part of the AME church. All right, Reverend, you coming? Yeah.
Before you finish, because it's a per speak to the retirement age for ministers, local as well, because we
Good.
had that.
Good. The retirement age is 75. That's whether you itinerant or local. 75. 75. We have not observed it probably more solidly because number one, maybe our lack of personnel. And number two, we're saying that the individuals don't have any income. Now, that does not beg, because you're telling me I'm gonna let you hold on to a ministry that people need to be nurtured and fed, and you can't sustain it just so you can get a check. That doesn't bode well. And locals, they say, well, we not, yeah, you answer the role that annual conference, don't you? Huh? Don't you answer the role that annual conference? So you belong to the what? Annual conference. Under the auspices of that local church. And so when 75 comes, and we retired some this time, they didn't like it, but they retired. And we're gonna come back, but let me tell you what did happen. Some young adults in the Dominican Republic conference, they came, had an audience with the bishop. Said, Bishop, we're working on a plan where we can provide some resources, sustenance to the pensioners, that's what they call them. Pensioners. All right. And then I later discovered that in some conferences, we had that already, but we misappropriated money. See? You may not have done it, but you know about it.
Yes, sir.
And so now it's hard to restart that engine. And so we're trying to even move, again, our situation is different. You have all of these different countries. So the legalities of annuities or insurance is different, and you have to explore it, and it takes time, all right? So we are looking at that. So persons who have served, and then you say, where the funds gonna come from? Well, a portion, as in the District 1 through 13, the church gives on behalf of their pastor a certain amount. And if the pastor want to include some in there, they can do that. But when you get to the age of retirement, you would have something left. But if we won't even raise enough money to meet local obligations now, I know we're not going to want to be doing pension. So it's a whole mindset. Somebody say mindset. Mindset. Because everything we're talking about, it's not like when you hear 1 through 13 that they got retirement, that the church, when I say the church, that the AME church is putting money in there. Each local church pays 12% annually which is 6%, a half of the pastor's salary for the pastor's retirement. All right? And that's how they get that. I don't know how we can do over here what we need to do, but I think we need to do something. Because at 75, you got to go. You got to go. Now there's one push further. The preacher's got to go at 75. Why we can't also legislate that lay leaders, lay persons, cannot hold a official office in the church. All right? Because at 75, some of the pastors are still vibrant, still sharp. But the book says, so at 75, why are we still not saying maybe I should not be a steward or a trustee or a class leader? Church might close down. God's church ain't never gonna close. And that's the problem now. Because some people holding y'all hostage. That if they're not a part, and you planned it, that's a whole other, let me stop. Our next presenter.
All right, I'm gonna summarize. Thank you, Bishop. We're gonna summarize. Just want to remind us as we are, that we, the Board of Examiners, are the gatekeepers. Just want to remind us that we ought to, as the Bible tells us, we ought to equip the saints for ministry. We ought to be mindful that we, as the gatekeepers, are to be equipping the candidates for ministry. We have a responsibility that we should be doing. And then not only that, I always use the analogy that you go to the doctor and you want the doctor that works on you to be certified and qualified.
Come on now.
You don't want anybody to say, "Oh, I've been called to be a doctor." You know, they got anointing now. The anointing didn't call them to be a doctor, right? But you don't want just anybody, "Oh, I'm called to be a doctor." They just doctor, no, they haven't been to school. They haven't gotten training. They don't understand about the body and everything. So I look at it this way, as the word reminds us over in Isaiah 34, I think, 35, somewhere in there, 36. It reminds us that we're tending to God's sheep. And we're taking care of God's sheep, not our sheep, but God's sheep.
That's right.
Therefore, we ought to help people, and we ought to want people, the laity ought to want clergy who have been trained, who have been equipped. But it also helps us to understand on the clergy side that you are very diverse. Because when you go and everybody talks, I'm called to preach. Okay, ministry is more than preaching. That's the least of things. So you want to be well-rounded. That's what education does, helps us to be well-rounded, because it's not just preaching classes, but you have administration classes, you have mission classes, you have all kinds that will help us. Pastoral responsibilities. And that's why in the Board of Examiners, the classes that we provide ought to be classes that are well-rounded. Maybe some dealing with injustice, dealing with justice, but not just one or two areas that we're preaching and reading or teaching, but it should be diverse. Being mindful that as we are gatekeepers, we're also over the lives of God's sheep. He's entrusted them to us. So why not, let's make them the best. Yes.
That's what I think, one of the issues that we have in the Caribbean is the fact that we are influenced by televangelists. And some of the televangelists, they offer Bible courses, training courses, and so on. And in view of the fact that we may not have fully organized training programs for ministers, they should attend these courses and assume that having attended these courses that we are well trained. And unfortunately, they come into the ministry, not being being somebody else. Sometimes this is the future, but they know absolutely nothing about that. Quality, history, nothing. And then there's another group who would say that they're being taught by the Holy Spirit. And consequently, do not need to be taught. I think we need to spend some time unpacking that so that as ministers and leaders, we understand that. And the third category is not because a person has a degree, a bachelor's, a master's, 5 masters, not because they have those qualifications, doesn't mean that they're qualified. Pastor, just need to spend a bit time on this.
Yes, and one thing I guess you have to also look at, the board, when I'm saying going to the board of examiners, they should be A&Ers. So we have to sit at the table and come up with curriculum that we know that fits and that we know that is correct in what they're teaching. So we have to know ourselves, the word, and also know what we're teaching, learn ourselves. And it may be abroad than what is available here. But we have to, the board, when we come together, we are teaching our own. So we should be teaching our own what's right. Another thing is, as you were saying about the ministry, I'm glad you brought that up. We have to understand everybody's not called to pastor. And we have to understand that there are many gifts and graces. So sometimes we try to force people into pastoring and they fail because that's not their calling, that's not their anointing. So we have to understand that some people may be teachers, some people may need to be professors, some people are evangelists. We have to, some people are church administrators, whatever. We have to understand the gifts, and that's why during the process of the 4-year process, and even before they get there, with the pastor as well working with them, because they're with them all the time, but even in the process, you ought to help them to be able to identify their calling, what they're called for. And it's okay if you're able to afford it, it's okay to have staff ministry. I did it 21 years and pastoring, but you still have to understand what are the calling for people, and each individual has to wrestle with that, to deal with that. It is not to say I'm here to preach. No, we all preach. We all, you should be teaching at some point in time. But what is your real calling? And then walk in the calling that God has anointed you for.
Dr. Carter, could you just very quickly go over, because I think we talked about itinerant, local, evangelist, exhorter, but specifically evangelist and exhorter. Can you speak to what exactly that is so that we're giving people an idea of the different types of tracks?
Well, the exhorter is one that, exhorts, they expound on the word, they encourage. The evangelists, go out. They really should go out and even in-house, help witness to. Some people may go out to the street, may do street, and street ministry is not the only evangelist that you can be, there are just different areas of evangelism, there's so many. That you are reaching the lives of people, help drawing them in. Some people preach and teach throughout the land. So, but it's still not even just exhorters, and it's still not just evangelists. Because it's like I was an itinerant elder and I was staff. I've done children's ministry full-time. So children's ministry, which is definitely needed in today's society, especially with the pandemic, we kind of lost a lot of young people. So it could be children's ministry. It could be women's, dealing with you have a passion and a calling anointing to deal with women or to deal with men. So there's so many different areas, and you don't necessarily have to be an exhorter, necessarily be an evangelist. But even if you are ordained, what are you doing? Just sitting? What are you doing, sitting on your graces? I mean, that's what the pastor has to also be securing themselves to know that, okay, I can have somebody who's helping me to do certain areas and they can be effective in the ministry to help build the ministry, because the pastor can't do everything. As much as we want to think we can, but you know, there are times when we definitely need some help. And so that's where those gifts and graces come in to help build the church, help the church to be what it is called to be. Yes.
In my ministry, that's one of the first things I do after they been licensed to preach. I interview each of the licentiates and talk about what's your passion, because passion fuels purpose. God will never give you a purpose so you don't give you a passion like you did. And I think that's where we need to start. Some people look at the status, but we got to look at the purpose for which we've been called.
Amen.
And it is up to the pastor to try to push them. I got some evangelists that I've never sent them to the board of examiners to be itinerants, locals, because that's not their call. And so the pastor is the first line of defense in making sure that we get the right people into the ministry of the church.
And I think as a church body, we've got to stop looking down on people who are not pastors. Right. Because every calling, every clergy, the part that they can add to the ministry makes a major difference.
Amen.
So it's important to the body. Right. So just like the blood is important to the body, it's just as important, you know, our hearing, our hearts, you know. So we have to understand the value that it takes all of us our gifts and graces to be able to help make the body of Christ be as an effective body, an effective, strong, and healthy church. And in order that we may be about the purpose of continuing to win souls for Christ and to make a difference in our community and in our world. So.
All right, let's give a hand. All right. Come on,